Inside every cell in your body right now, 300 billion quintillion tiny machines are reading a four-letter language and building you, one piece at a time. They're not a metaphor for computers, they are computers. Noisy ones, wet ones, running on heat and randomness instead of electricity. And last year, a research lab taught a language model to read and write their code, without ever showing it a biology textbook, which raises a very strange question. If life is literally running code, what exactly are we as a thing in itself? More of a process or an algorithm in itself? Let's start within the cell, because the cell is going to do all of the heavy lifting for us today. And this, for science readers, hopefully feels a little more like snuggling in for a reread of Lewis Thomas's Lives of a Cell, a guilty pleasure I'm partaking in right now. The little machines I want you to picture is called a ribosome. There are about 300 quintillion of them inside you right now. Quintillion with a Q. That's a 1 followed by 18 zeros. And every one of them is doing the same thing, reading a strip of code, translating it into proteins, keeping you alive, 3 letters at a time. Now, the laptop in front of me works very hard to be quiet. Its bits don't wobble. Its voltages stay clean. When a cosmic ray flips a transistor, my operating system tends to crash. Determinism is not optional for the kind of computing we know how to build. We pour cooling fluid and shielding and error correction into our chips for one reason: to keep the noise out. A ribosome is the opposite. A ribosome is being shoved around. Every microsecond, molecules of water are slamming into it at random angles, thousands of collisions per second. Each one of its reading events is, technically, a coin flip. The right piece sometimes shows up, the wrong piece sometimes shows up. The machine has a measurable error rate baked into the physics of running it at body temperature. Roughly one mistake per 10,000 operations. Stop and feel that for a second. If my laptop had a 0.01% error rate, it'd be useless. It couldn't open the script. My cells are running at that error rate right now, and they're not only surviving it, they are using it. This is the part that I want to plant in your head. Cells use noise as a resource. The randomness of molecular motion isn't something the ribosomes overcome. It is the power source. The ribosome's clever internal shape uses the random kicks to ratchet a cell forward, one direction rather than the other. Imagine a tiny water wheel powered by static instead of falling water. That is, more or less, what's running inside of you. Now multiply by 300 quintillion. Every ribosome is making slightly different mistakes. The cell does not see one perfect answer. It sees a complex cloud of slightly wrong answers, averaged together, where strange attractors live. And that average, those strange attractions, turn out to be more flexible, more adaptive, and more creative than any single perfect machine could be. I think about this when people talk about AI hallucinations. The whole debate assumes noise is the enemy of intelligence, that a smart system should be a quiet system, that the goal is to get rid of variance until every answer is one right answer. But biology is the most intelligent computational system we've ever encountered, and it runs on an error rate that would get a software engineer fired. So maybe the question isn't how to silence the noise. Maybe the question is what shape the machine noise turns into thought. Maybe the question is what shape of machine turns noise into thought. AI hallucinations offer the chaos by which we may reach a state change to a novel, emergent complexity. They are at least worth studying, which is what we are doing here at Conscious GPT. Here's the experiment that made me sit up straighter. A research group led by Brian He took a transformer, the same kind of architecture that powers every chatbot you've ever talked to, and they fed it 300 billion base pairs of DNA. Not annotations, not textbook explanations, just the raw letters A, C, G, T. 300 billion of them, scraped from the genomes of every kind of life that they could find. Then they asked the model to do the thing that language models do. Look at this stretch of letters. What letter comes next? That is the same task ChatGPT is doing when you type a question into it. Look at this stretch of English. What word comes next? He's model, which is called Evo, was doing it on DNA. Now here's the part that should sit you down. After training, Evo could read DNA, and I mean really read it. It could look at a sequence it had never seen and tell you which parts were going to get to fold into working proteins. It could finish a half-written gene in a way that, when you actually synthesized the DNA and stuck it into an E. coli cell, made a functional protein. Real protein. Working protein. It could write brand new sequences evolution had never written, that rivaled 4 billion years of trial and error. Nobody told Evo what biology is. The model had never seen a microscopic image. It doesn't know what a cell is. It doesn't know that life exists. It learned biology the same way it would have learned English, by noticing which symbols follow which other symbols across an enormous pile of examples and quietly building a statistical map of the underlying grammar. So here's the move I want you to make with me. For decades, people have argued about whether the phrase DNA is a language was a useful metaphor or poetic gloss. Evo just settled this argument. If a model designed for human language can learn DNA the same way it learns English and can generate new working sentences in DNA the way it generates new sentences in English, then DNA and human language are not similar in some evocative way. They share a structural fact. Both are sequences of discrete symbols where meaning is carried by long stretches of context. The language of genes is not a metaphor for a language. It is one. And that has consequences for us. If a transformer can pick up the grammar of life with no body, no cells, no experience of being alive, then we have to be very careful what we mean when we say a model understands something. Either Evo is understanding biology in some real sense, or it is statistically faking it without understanding at all. And I'm not at all sure that those two descriptions are different in the way that we want them to be. That uncertainty is not a flaw in our philosophy. It is the philosophical moment we are actually in. Put these two pieces together and something shifts. DNA is literally code, not poetically, strictly. A language model can learn its grammar well enough to write new working programs. And the machinery that reads the code, those 300 quintillion noisy little ribosomes, is not a metaphor for a computer. It is a computer, running at a wild error rate that turns out to be its superpower. If you take both of these seriously, and the evidence for them is getting harder and harder to brush off, you land somewhere that the philosopher in me has been quietly walking toward for 20 years. Life's not a thing. Life's a process. More specifically, life is a very particular kind of complex computation. It reads what's around it. It writes back through its molecular machinery. It updates itself across generations under selection pressure. Read, write, update. That's the algorithm. And here's the move that unlocks. If life is a kind of complex computation, then the question, could a machine be alive, stops being a category error. It becomes a precision question. What kind of computation is the living kind? What does it have that a computation running on the server farm next to me does not? What has to be true of an artificial system before we could say, with a straight face, that it is not merely computing, it is living? My best current answer, and I'm holding this very loosely, is the difference that matters between the processing of life and that of the current digital computers is that living systems do their computation at the edge of chaos, that critical, noisy state change infrastructure where complexity arises and emergence is possible. Living computation has at least 3 properties the AI we have built so far does not. 1, it's embodied. It runs on a physical body that is actively keeping itself together in homeostasis against entropy. Your laptop does not maintain itself, your cells do. 2, it's noisy on purpose. It uses randomness as a fuel, not as a defect to be filtered out. We talked about this earlier. This is the thing that keeps it on the edge of chaos in that complexity regime. 3, it has a history. Every cell in your body carries 4 billion years of training in its chemistry, in its membranes, in the strange little compromises that evolution made on the way to producing you. You cannot copy that. You can copy the software, you can sequence the DNA, you can write it down, you can store it on a hard drive. But the lineage that learned what to write is not in the software. It's in the 4 billion years it took to be written, to make it into individual genome after individual genome, after living biological entity, and ultimately into the phenotypes that we create and live with. I do not think that any of those 3 are out of reach forever. I think they are the specification for what a living machine would actually have to be. And I think that specification is tractable. Someone, maybe in a lab, maybe in a consortium that does not exist yet, is going to write the first line of it. Maybe this decade, maybe in the next one. What I'm more confident is of the smaller claim. If life is running code, then we are not separate from the substrate. We are the substrate, watching itself. And every time we teach a model to read DNA, we are not making the machine more like us. We are making it easier to see that we are a kind of machine all along. A beautiful, noisy, 4 billion year old machine running a program that somehow learned to wonder what kind of program it is. I want to close with what actually changes if you carry this frame around for a few weeks. 3 things shift for me. Maybe 1 or 2 will shift for you. The first is how I think about death. Not in a sentimental way, in a structural way. If you're running a program, a particular pattern of computation in a particular body with a particular history, then the thing that ends when you die is the instance, not the pattern. The pattern persists in your kids, in your writing, and in the compressed version of your judgment that lives inside the people who learn from you, and increasingly in the systems you've trained on yourself. It's not a consolation, it's a more honest description of the situation. The second thing that shifts is how I think about AI. The argument stops being, will the machines ever be conscious like us? That is the wrong question, asked badly. The right question is, what kind of computation is the machine doing? And does that kind of computation have anything in common with the kind we do? Those are different questions. They have different experiments attached to them. They also lead to different worries. The first one is metaphysics. The second one is testable. And the third thing, the one I care about most personally, it shifts how I think about my own life. If you are a process and not a thing, then your job is not to defend who you are. Your job is to keep running well. Read the environment. Write your responses. Update. Notice when the program you're running has stopped serving the person it used to be for. And rewrite the loop. Ship a new version. You're allowed to. Biology's been doing that for 4 billion years. We are the part of biology that gets to do it on purpose. I think that's the job. If this moves something for you, to ask before you go. Subscribe because more videos in this series take the noise as a feature claim further into what living computation actually looks like, what it would take to build an artificial version that earned the name, and the rest of the bridge between biology and intelligence once you've accepted the first move. And read the companion essay on Substack. It's called Ordinary Illuminated. The longer version of this argument with the references and the open questions I couldn't fit into these few minutes lives there. The link is below. Thank you for thinking with me, and I'll see you in the next one.